Welcome back to the simulator series. In today's episode, we are going to be calculating and displaying the amount of clicks per second each player accumulates. As always, if you guys do enjoy the video or it does help you out, make sure you smash the like button, also the subscribe button, and turn post notifications on if you want to get notified when I upload more Roblox development content. I also have a Patreon if you guys like to support me and get access to all the scripts and the game file I make during this episode. There's a link down below in the description, and you guys can go and check that out. With that being said, let's get right into it. So, hopping directly into Studio, the first thing we want to do is go into our starter GUI, into the currency GUI, into the frame, into the clicks, and then we see we have a text label called CPS, which stands for clicks per second. We actually want to set the visibility of this to false so that when we load into our game, it's not visible. And now we want to go inside of the currency GUI and open up the manager local script. Now, the first thing we're actually going to do is create a static variable, because if we look at the CPS label and look at the text, we can take this text and then turn it into a string template. So we're going to say local clicks per second string template equals, and then we'll just create a string and then throw that inside. Now we're going to actually replace the 1.5k with all caps amount, just like that. And now the reason for this is because whenever we actually set the clicks per second text labels text, all we have to do is take this string and then use the gsub method on it and replace the word with amount with the actual amount that we have. And we'll get to that shortly. Now the next thing we want to do is actually create a brand new function, which is called update clicks per second, and that's actually going to accept an amount, which is going to be a number. Now we actually want to call this brand new function inside of our update currency function, and we only want to call this function if the currency is equal to clicks, so we're going to call that right inside of here. So we'll say update clicks per second and pass through the amount. Now the issue is though is that we're actually setting the amount to a string because we're using format number dot format compact on the amount, but this function actually requires a number and not a string. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy format number dot format compact, and then we'll delete that entirely. And now when we set the clicks.text and gem.text to the amount, we're actually going to say format number, format compact, and then pass through the amount. So there we go. Now that we've done that, the update clicks per second will actually be passed a number, not a string. What we'll then do is we'll actually create two brand new variables. The first variable is going to be called clicks during second, and that's going to be set to 0. And we'll also have another variable which is going to be called previous clicks amount, which is also equal to 0. Inside of our update clicks per second function, we're actually going to be using the amount, and we'll also be using the previous clicks amount so that we can determine how many clicks the player has received. So we'll say local amount of clicks equals amount minus previous clicks amount. So now that we've determined how many clicks the player has actually received, we need to update the previous clicks amount variable to the newest amount. And now that we've done that, we actually want to check if the amount of clicks is less than or equal to 0, because if it is, then we actually just want to return end right there. And the reason for that is because if this is actually true, then that means that the amount that was actually passed to this function is less clicks than the player previously had. So most likely they bought something from the store or did something which reduced the amount of clicks that the player had. After we check that, we then want to use the clicks during second, and we actually want to add the amount of clicks to that variable. Then we can get the clicks per second text label, and we're actually going to set the text. Now the way that we're going to set the text is by saying clicks per second string template, and then we'll use that gsub method on it, and we're going to replace the word amount in all caps with the clicks during second variable. Now we probably want to use the format number on this as well, so let's make sure that we do that. And now after we've done that, we set the text label's visibility to true so that we can see it. So our current setup will actually take all the clicks that we're receiving and add them to the clicks during second variable. But now we also have to reduce that as well. And the way that we're going to do that is by using the task.delay, and we're going to wait 1 second, and then we'll create a brand new function. And now that we have that, we basically want to do the opposite of what we did up here. So we can actually copy all 3 of those lines right there, paste them directly into here. And now what we want to do is instead of saying plus equals, we're going to say minus. So we're actually going to subtract the amount of clicks from clicks during second. Then we'll also set the text label once again. And for the visibility, what we actually want to do is we want to say clicks during second is greater than 0. So after we subtract the amount, we'll keep the text label as visible if the player's clicks per second is greater than 0. But if the player's clicks per second is less than or equal to 0, then we're actually going to make the text label no longer visible. So now that we've done that, we can go into our game and test this out. So hopping directly into our game, I can start clicking, and we can see we are getting 1 to 2 clicks per second, and that is working perfectly. Another cool way of testing this out would be going inside of the replicated storage, inside of the player data, inside of the template, and we can actually set the duration of our auto clickers to 10, and we can test our auto clickers out with this as well. Hopping back into our game, we can go ahead and turn on our regular auto clicker, which should click 1 times per second, and we can actually see that this is holding true. And then we can also turn on our fast auto clicker as well, and we can see with both of them combined, we were getting 3 clicks per second. And then if we also start clicking as well, that will add to the amount of clicks per second too. Now, just to fully test out this function, another thing that we need to consider is imagine if the amount that is passed to this function is actually less than the previous clicks amount. So that would mean that somehow the player lost a certain amount of clicks. Now, the reason that I'm bringing this up is because when you're creating stuff like this, you want to think of all the different possibilities or ways that this thing can break or go wrong or anything else like that. So we of course want to test this function to make sure that even if the player's clicks go down, this will still work perfectly fine. Now what we're going to do to be able to easily adjust the player's clicks is we'll actually create a command for that. In the last episode, we actually went over how to create and add commands directly to our game, so now we can go ahead and easily create another command. So we're going to go inside of the server script service, inside of the commander folder, and inside of the commands folder. Now what I do is I just duplicate one of my own commands and then I'll rename it to whatever the new command is that I want. So we're going to say adjust player clicks, and then we can open that, and now we have to adjust some of its properties. So adjust player clicks. Usually I don't really care about the aliases. I always at least just throw one in there just to have it there. For the description, I really don't care. Adjust players clicks. Now for the two arguments, of course, the first argument we still want it to be the player, and then for the second argument we'll actually use a number. So the name of this will be amount of clicks, and then for the description we can say the amount of clicks to add or subtract from the player. Now we'll also duplicate the get player data server, and we'll replace get player data server with adjust player click server. Also, I'm going to make the first letter of them capital. I accidentally made them lowercase. Then we can go ahead and open up the adjust player click server script right there. Now inside of here, we should go ahead and update the arguments. So the first one is of course going to be a player, but that's not optional. And the second argument is going to be amount, which is a number. We can then delete that line of code because we no longer need to set the player since it's always given to us. I mean, realistically, we could delete everything, but just leave one return statement right there, and we're just going to say adjusted. Now what we actually want to do is we want to say player data dot adjust clicks, and we'll pass through the player and we'll pass through the amount. And there we go. So now that we have that command created, we can go directly into our game. Once we're in our game, we can open up the commander terminal and we can say adjust player clicks, pass through the player, and then the amount of clicks that we want to pass through. So let's just say 10, and we can see that we get 10 clicks per second, and then it quickly goes away. So let's just click for a couple of seconds. We'll get to like 15, for example, and we can see it's all working good. Now we'll actually subtract some clicks from this. So we'll just say minus 10, and we can see that when we have 10 subtracted clicks, no clicks per second pops up. But then when we click again, we can see that the click per second is popping up once again. Now with that out of the way, I think that we've tested this enough to say that this is most likely a foolproof method of calculating the clicks per second. The last thing that I want to do is go back inside of the replicated storage, inside of the player data folder, open up the template, and just make sure that we reset the default auto info back to 0 and make sure that this is false, just so that it's back to normal and no longer in our little testing mode. With that all being said, ladies and gentlemen, you should now have a working clicks per second calculator in your game, and it should be perfectly displayed on your GUI. If you enjoyed or the video did help you out, make sure you smash the like button, also the subscribe button, and turn post notifications on if you want to get notified when I upload more Roblox development content. Of course, I have a Patreon if you guys like to support me and gain access to all the scripts and the game file that I made during this episode. There's a link down below in the description, and you guys can go and check that out. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next episode.